publisher of Minico Incorporated, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is one of our monthly webinars presented to self-storage owners, operators, managers, investors, developers, and other industry professionals. Today's presentation is Above the Roof, Below the Roof, Making Money on Both Sides. It is sponsored by Baja Construction, based in Martinez, California. Our presenter is Baja CEO Bob Hayworth, whose construction background dates to his teenage years when he began building carports with his father each summer. Having built his first self-storage building in 1976, he has built millions of square feet of storage since then. Baja's first RV and boat storage project was constructed in 1986. Since then, Bob has been a driving force in establishing RV and boat storage as an acceptable alternative to self-storage. In 2007, Bob built his first solar carport. In 2007, solar carports amounted to 20% of Baja's business. Currently, however, 80% of Baja sales are solar. Today, Baja and its 100 employees continue to lead their core business in carports, RV and boat storage, and self-storage while continuing to drive innovation in solar support systems. This year marks the 31st anniversary of Mini Storage Messenger, which provides the self-storage industry with in-depth news and information about timely topics and the latest industry trends. Minico also publishes a variety of other self-storage data sources, such as those you see on your screen. For more information, please visit ministoragemessenger.com. Before we get started this morning, I'd like to cover a few webinar details for newcomers. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on demand from our archives at ministoragemessenger.com, where you can also find information about our upcoming webinars. This presentation should run approximately 45 minutes, with the remainder of the hour open to questions and answers. As such, we invite you to submit your questions throughout the webinar by typing the question into the question area and clicking Send. We will try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. However, those that can't be answered due to time constraints will be answered by way of email after the webinar. And now it is my distinct pleasure to turn the presentation over to Bob. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Are we ready to go?
We are ready to go.
Great. Okay, our topic is above the roof, below the roof, and how to make money using RV and boat storage. As an introduction, this webinar will serve to inform and educate the mini storage and RV and boat storage owners on how to increase their bottom line by incorporating solar into your storage solution. Okay, agenda, above the roof, revenue generated or avoided utility costs. Above the roof, by placing solar panels on top of the roof, you can generate revenue in two ways. If you have a large energy usage for your facility, in other words, you have climate-controlled facility that uses a lot of electricity, and or you have tenants that use a lot of electricity, that you can design your system so it's zero net metering, so that at the end of the year your electrical bill is zero. And then there's another way of doing that, which we'll get into later, called feed-in tariffs. That's where your utility company actually pays you close to retail rates for the power generated. And this obviously is your income that's on top of the roof. So on below the roof, you have your normal shade income that's generated by the rental of your RV and boat storage. Solar vocabulary. Okay, avoid utility costs. That's what I was speaking of with zero net metering. That basically get rid of all your electrical bill. MACRS depreciation. That's the accelerated depreciation you get by using a solar RV and boat canopy. Federal grant you're actually, by putting in solar, there is a 30% grant you can get from the federal government in lieu of a investment tax credit. And then utility rebate. The utility companies are actually offering you money for putting in solar. And then, of course, the feed-in tariff, which I spoke about, which is where the utility company actually will buy back your power at close to retail rates. So RV and boat storage market as a whole is a great opportunity. Basically, the RV and boat storage is a good way to generate income without having the issues that mini storages has. And the issues that mini storage has is basically that you have, not everyone that rents a mini storage from you is in a great economic situation. Whereas RV and boat storage, they have things there that are of value, and generally anywhere from $50,000 to $1.5 million that they care about, and so they actually pay their rent, and they wouldn't be interested in you basically leaning and selling that property. And the reason this market has been created is because most CC&Rs on new development don't allow the RV and boats on their property. Most residences don't have enough side room, side yards, or front yards to be able to store your boat on your residence. A lot of cities are outlawing the use of RV and boats on their city to be parked on city streets. Some areas, such as Austin, Texas, actually have fines as much as $100 a day. So there, and plus you need when you have something of such high value like a RV that is anywhere again from $100,000 to $1.5 million, you want it basically secure, so off a city street where it can't be vandalized and or stolen or broken into, and you want protection from the elements because they're a substantial investment. So the storage facilities basically provide that, the RV and boat storage provide that service, and it's also a way of land banking like the mini storage used to be. But we've added basically another source of income by putting the solar on top of it. So you can generate power and money or avoid paying high energy bills by producing your own energy if you're consuming a lot. And at the same time, through the stimulus package, the federal government will give you a 30% tax credit and or a check, and you have accelerated depreciation of 5 years for anything that's solar, and the structure being that it's no longer a RV cover, it's a solar support system, is part of those credits and depreciation. Okay, the sun, as we know, is the single greatest factor in the deterioration of the roof and interior of the vehicles. Basically, solar radiation will destroy, as we all know, the inside of a car or RV or boat. So the heat from the sun causes the materials to expand and contract, fades it, cracks it, all kinds of stuff. So how do we make a solar project work? Well, we have to take into account wind loads, live loads, soil, the credits, grants, rebates, and feed-in tariffs. the site location, longitude, and latitude of the project, the panel configuration and orientation. In other words, try to lay out the project so that the RV and boat covers are running east to west instead of north and south, so that way we can tilt the RV cover slightly towards the south to get a little bit better energy production. And then, of course, what are the energy costs in your area? As far as longitude and latitude goes, pretty much all of the United States is, of the continental United States, and Hawaii are good places for solar. Germany is the highest producing solar energy country in the world. They do about 25% of their total electricity comes from solar, and they're about the same latitude as New York. So what are the factors that you need to consider for solar? Well, you want to have at least 5 hours of sun, which pretty much that's every place in the United States. The site plan orientation, you obviously don't want to have your RV and boat cover on the north side of a multi-story building. You want it on the south side. And you don't want any shading, because when the solar panels, especially the crystalline panels, get shaded, they quit functioning. So what are the key components of a solar system? You have solar panels that convert sunlight to electricity. You have the solar support system, which is basically used to be called the RV cover, is now a solar support system, and that's all it is. It's just a tall carport. You have inverters that converts DC power to AC power, because all the solar panels produce DC power. And then you have the monitoring equipment, and most systems include that, and you want to include that so that you can see exactly how much power you're producing at any given time, any given day. And then the financial motivations for solar is you either want to offset your electricity bills and or produce additional income through a feed-in tariff. Robin, you can step in anytime you want.
I'd love to. Just introduce me, Bob, so I can...
Oh, I'm sorry. I have with me Robin Hoyer. She is the COO of iPark Solar, which is the developing arm of Baja Construction for solar power projects. I'm sorry, I got all excited and got ahead of myself. Why are we doing this? Well, it's a hedge against rising costs of energy. You can jump in there, Robin, and tell us where you think energy is going.
Okay, so everyone is pretty familiar with the RV boat storage investment, and what we're doing right now in the beginning of this webinar is sort of explaining the solar power opportunity, and then we'll kind of piece it all together to let you know what kind of money you can, how you can increase your bottom line above the roof and below the roof. As we're talking about the solar power investment, there are two ways that you can look at generating power. You can generate power to offset your energy use if you have a cold storage or any kind of climate control facility that generates a lot of power. Solar energy will offset that power use. And what it really does is actually help to basically hedge against your peak. And peak is where you end up spending most of your money. You've got a base rate, and then you've got some peak costs. And in the summer, between noon and 5, it's what's called super peak. And your rates almost go quadruple what they normally are. So solar power is a great way, if you've got energy use, to offset that energy use. And when we talk about hedging against rising energy costs, it locks in you to basically having free power in exchange for the capital cost of the system. And you avoid the increasing energy costs, which are estimated to go up On the most conservative level, it's about 6.7%. I've just talked to some utility companies, and they actually anticipate it going more to 10 to 20% higher in the next 5 years. So we really feel like this is a great way to reduce your exposure to the rising energy costs.
All right. So what are the advantages of going green? Well, the first big advantage is you get a 30% federal tax credit or federal tax grant. So if you're not making money that you need a federal tax credit, then you can opt for the federal tax grant, which is a check that's produced 60 days after your system is producing power. And that comes from the Department of Energy. Now that ends in December of 2010. Basically, you have to have 10% of the money for the solar portion expended by December of 2010, and then you're good as long as it's built out by 2017. Now that may or may not be renewed. Everybody seems to think it will be. Plus, you get 50% depreciation. So in other words, you can depreciate the whole solar portion, including the solar support structure, over 5 years. You have accelerated depreciation. Go ahead.
And I just wanted to highlight that in addition to the tax-free grant that is set to expire if not renewed, which we all suspect will be renewed, the 50% bonus depreciation was an existing renewable solar energy incentive that allowed you, in addition to the 5 years maker's depreciation, to depreciate 50% of it in year one. And with respect to look-back provisions on depreciation, it was allowing people who've made money in the last 5 years to actually offset some of that tax liability. We suspect that the as many incentives as have been initiated will be extended, because it seems with the capital markets the way they are that not many companies have taken advantage of these renewable energy programs.
And I think you need to check with your accountant, but I believe you can go back 2 years.
Yeah, I checked with your accountant, because I think for small to medium-sized businesses they actually might have extended that provision as well.
Okay. And then, of course, then you can get also utility rebates from your utility company, such as in California they have rebates for Northern and Southern California. Do you want to expound on that?
And I'll expand on that. Those utility rebates are really specific to each utility company. You can't even say it's a statewide program. Each company, utility company, has their own incentives and motivations for promoting renewable energy and solar projects. And even within the state of California, between PG&E, Southern Cal and Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric, the rebates range from 15 cents to 22 cents, and they keep getting reduced upon completion of a certain number of projects. So they have a pool of money, and the first batch gets the highest utility rebates, and then once they complete that level, they go to the next batch, and then they reduce the incentives. And so it's really utility by utility. And then there's some private utilities like Anaheim, where they're actually offering 29 cents. So this is really, really site-specific and something that we can help you with. Or there's a website called Desire, and you can actually plug in your state, and then you can search for your county or utility company and see what in fact are the rebates specific to your site location.
All right. And then, of course, you get revenue from your shaded parking. That's normal RV and boat storage revenue. And then you can either reduce your energy bill by whatever you consume, designing it so that your electrical bill is zero at the end of the year, or if you're not consuming enough energy to make it feasible, then hopefully you're in an area where the utility company will pay you a feed-in tariff, which is FIT. That's what that FIT stands for. And for example, in California, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric will pay a feed-in tariff. Southern California Edison and San Diego Gas and Electric, right?
Right, exactly.
And then you also are available for 2 lead points towards your project by using solar RV. And then of course you have the green marketing strategy, which I think is a great marketing tool, being that you can say that you are basically energy friendly in your project. It's good for the city that you're building in. You can use it for marketing, advertising that you're a green RV and boat storage, and so it'll give you a leg up on all your competitors. I mean, there's a lot of marketing strategies you can basically design around that project.
What we found is that most people embrace being green, so long as it doesn't cost them any more, or maybe just a little bit more, and they certainly would rather park their RV or boat in a facility that's green if they feel like they're bettering the environment in some way without them having to buy an electric car or something of that nature. So we find that there's a great way to increase your occupancy and even increase your rates as your occupancy goes up by promoting your green marketing strategy and just offering different benefits and incentives that make people feel like they are part of bettering the environment.
And then if that website that Robin was speaking of, where you can go find out your local incentives and rebates, is www.desireUSA.org.
Yeah.
That's produced by the University of North Carolina, and it's fairly current for all areas of the United States. My slide's not moving.
Rebecca and Robin, can you forward
Let me see
that?
if I can move it. Nope, mine's not. Let me see. I'll do it this way. Okay.
Is it moving now?
We're set now.
Yeah, we're back. We're set.
My slide still isn't moving. Did you move yours?
This is the right slide, Bob.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so taking advantage of the green. Well, we already did this slide.
So it's shelter assets generate green. And what it talks about basically is the way that you can take advantage of both sheltering your assets with a roof and all the different ways that that protects the RVs and the boats and all the storage you might have. And that roof, which we are using as a PV panel, a solar panel, can then, on the top of that side, generate electricity. So we really think that we were onto something with using a concept of an RV boat storage canopy, taking the structure, replacing the roof with a solar panel. And you still have the same business economics for shaded parking for RVs and boats, but you've added another element, which is either offsetting your utility costs if you actually have a large consumption of energy, or the opportunity to sign a contract with the utility company to feed back that power into the grid at a certain price. So you'll have revenue from the energy generated on the top of the roof or the PV panel, and below the PV panel you'll have the shaded parking, which is your generic business model for RV and boat storage. Bob, are you on the Shelter Assets Generate Green page?
No, I lost my it won't move on my computer.
Okay.
So you're going to have to continue on.
Okay.
So, quick, Robin. Bob, it looks like you've logged off. If you can just go through the process of logging back on while Robin continues, that'll probably help us out.
Okay, great.
Okay. The next slide actually shows a case study, and this is the first RV boat storage solar facility that was built. It's using Baja's solar support structure, and it's down in San Diego. And in this instance, the Municipal Water District was looking for a way to offset their energy use. They had a large energy consumption with their recreational facility, and they had extra square footage to throw up some shaded RV boat storage parking. So what we did is we went out and decided to use a low watt panel so that we could cover as much square footage as possible to create shaded parking. And while we get Bob back online, I'll just talk with you a little bit further about why we would use a low watt panel. So solar panels come in all different watts, just like light bulbs. And you can range from 60 to 280 on a crystalline, and then there's some thin film opportunities that I won't go into. Now, if you have a large watt panel and you need a production for, say, a megawatt, you might have X amount of square footage needed to create that energy. Well, if you want to cover as much space as possible and allow all of your structure to be part of the 30% tax credit and the maker's depreciation, then what you'd want to do is use a low watt panel so you can cover as much square footage as possible to get to the same energy output. And that is sort of the fine dance that we do when we look at RV and boat storage locations, is we take a look at what your site square foot requirements can be and how much shaded parking you'd like to put on your site, and then we back out then the number for the energy consumption you might have, or for what the maximum for a feed-in tariff might be with your local utility. And when I say the maximum for the feed-in tariff for the local utility, the local utilities have this feed-in tariff program, but they limit it. For instance, in PG&E territory, it's 1.5 megawatts. It's the limitation on being able to participate in your energy being put back in the grid without going through a formal RFP or RFQ process and being in the likes of solar farms. So we do a real thorough analysis of your site and your square footage, and then we back out what the panel wattage needs to be able to generate the power we need. And let me go to the next slide.
Yeah.
In this project, Bob, you back on?
For some reason my internet went out. But go ahead.
So on this project, I'm talking about this Padre Dam Municipal Water District. And you all know off the top of your head if you want to talk about the size and the power and the rebates, or I can work off the screen, whatever's.
No, I can do it. Basically, this project we built in the San Padre Municipal Water District. It was a $7 million project. The California state incentive, that in other words, the rebate back from the utility company was $1,650,000. The depreciation savings was $2.5 million. The federal tax credit, now this was before they gave you the grant, so they got a federal tax credit of $2,150,000. So the net cost of the project was $785,000. So basically you had 475 RV spaces that the net cost was $785,000. So, which would be generating $47,000 a month. So
right. This project was particularly successful financially in that it was done last year and the incentives were a bit higher, and also because it was in San Diego has a high utility rate that they were able to offset their energy use in this scenario, and so we found that based from the gross cost to the net cost of the project was 11% of the gross cost.
And I went by the project just the other day, and it's totally full. They have 100% occupancy, and they actually need more spaces. So that's a pretty nice thing. So
yeah.
Okay. Now, are you down to mine yet? The next.
No. So let me advance the slide for everyone on the webinar so we could see what's next. Hold on. I don't know why. Having some trouble here. Okay, this is going to be the interior of some of these projects, and this is going to be the top panels. In this project, what they did is they racked them on a roof to get maximum output. As you can see, they're sort of on a tilt, so they can capture as much of the sun's rays as possible, which then is converted into electricity. This is not how we normally do these projects. What we'd like to see is having the PV actually racked on to Baja's support structure. They've got these special clips in place where you don't even need the extra expense of a roof, and the PV itself becomes the roof. And it is a much more economic way to do it. And it also is, it actually follows more of the rules of the IRS as it relates to a 30% tax grant for the solar support structure. And there's been talk back and forth about what qualifies, whether it's the panels or the inverters or the structure itself. And what we found is if you can show that if you pull the panels off this structure and there's no secondary use for the structure, the entire cost of that build will be qualified for a 30% tax grant. So with a roof on it, you might say that there's a secondary purpose of shade. So we often say, if possible, skip the roof so you don't have to have a red face test with the IRS on the project.
Now this project, the reason we put the panels on those slopes is the buildings were actually going north to south, and so that's why we put the panels so that they were racked sloping south. The way you're looking at that picture is those panels are facing south.
Okay, let me see if I
can you advance to the next slide?
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Perfect.
We're off Oakley.
Okay, and then this is the project that I'm going to do for myself in Oakley, California. It's currently a vineyard right now, and we're going to do 322 spaces of solar, RV, and boat storage. And basically what's going to happen, can you go to the next slide, is basically what's going to happen is I'm going to, you got it?
I'm trying. Hold on. Okay.
These are the development costs. This is the normal development costs for a project of this size. These are the normal things you would do. But if you'll notice, there are no structures in that development cost because this is what is going to be not included in the solar grant and depreciation and incentives. So go to the next slide, please.
So site development work would not qualify for the 30% tax grant. So you pull the structure out of the site development work and you include it in your solar project so that you can maximize 30%. And I will, oops,
Okay, so here you go. Oh, go back to the one you were on.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. So basically what's going to happen from this site is it's an $8 million project. So it's very similar to the one that we did in San Padre Dam in size. And you design this is in the PG&E area, so that you can build up to 1.5 megawatts. Okay, so that's what we got it designed for. And from this $8 million, $6 million of it is the solar portion. So out of that $6 million, we'll get back an investment tax credit of approximately $2 million. The electricity revenue will be $212,000. That's annual revenue. And the RV and boat storage annual revenue will be $460,000. And then, of course, you'll have the depreciation for that first year. So, basically you're getting back $4 million out of the $6 million in the first year.
So, Bob, go back to, on the electricity revenue, I'll talk a little bit about that feed-in tariff, and then if you can talk about your price per square foot on the RV boat revenue so that everyone understands where these numbers come from.
Sure.
On the electricity revenue, as this is so site-specific, PG&E, as I said before, offers a feed-in tariff up to 1.5 megawatts. So the way we designed the site was to have as many RV boat storage parking spots as possible to equal 1.5 megawatts, so that we could actually maximize the RV and boat revenue parking. So based on the panels we selected and the price that we can get from PG&E for feeding that green power back into the grid, we came up with about $212,000. That's kind of a moving target because it's based on the sun hours and peak rates and super peak rates. So just know that's an estimate and needs to be further refined, and actually reality will actually dictate what that number is. But we're pretty confident on a conservative basis it's somewhere around $200,000. As for the RV and boat parking revenue, because we've used a low watt panel, we've been able to maximize the number of spaces to increase the revenue. And Bob can talk about how he's configured the spaces and the sizes to maximize that revenue as well.
Let's see, can I get it to move? No, I can't. Can you get it to go back to the picture?
Yes. There you go.
We designed this project so all of these buildings are facing south. So they're all going east to west. And then they're various different sizes, but we pretty much made everything more or less on 60 feet to 40 feet in depth. So that Oakley is going to be a high boat area, so they'll be able to have boats on both sides of the structures, and then we basically have that would eliminate drive aisles. So we laid out the project with solar in mind. So can you go back?
And what's the clear height on those?
Everything's at 14 foot.
14 feet.
14 foot clear height, and then we put a slight slope on it to produce a little bit more power. So I think they're 16 feet on the high side, 16 to 16.6. So can you go back to where we were?
And then as it relates to the revenue, you estimated that on a price per square foot?
Right. Yeah, the revenue is basically 32 cents a square foot.
Okay.
So go back one slide.
Okay, well.
Okay, so basically here's it, kind of gives you and this is kind of rough, but it'll give you an idea what your costs are. Basically, the solar portion of the job is about $6 million. The normal development stuff is $2 million. So, but the solar portion includes the solar support structure, which we used to refer to as the RV covers. So the total project is $8 million. And then can you go to the cash flow slide?
Yep. Trying to get there. Hold on.
So, okay. Oh, back up.
There we go.
And so basically the thing, cash flows from the very first year, actually the cash flow the first year because of the grant is wonderful. I mean, you basically end up with $2 million in the bank. And then after its debt service, year 2 on, it pays for itself with a little bit of income, not much. But what you've done, this is what you've accomplished. You've basically taken land that was not being used, that was a cost, and the land was paid for. You've developed it, and there are entities that are willing to finance the solar portion of the project if you have trouble with money. So all you have to do is go to your normal bank for the small portion of the project, which would be the $2 million. And you've put in $2 million in your pocket that you can use for rent reserve, and you've taken care of, in my personal case, all of my tax opportunities, and actually are able to recoup some of the taxes I paid 2 years ago. So, I mean, you end up with a project that's cash flowing, that you have money in the bank for rent reserve, and you've taken care of all your tax issues. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. And you can actually, like with my bank, I'm actually making them happy, because by depositing that $2 million in their bank, then what they get to do is they get to loan it out 10 times that amount, because they can loan out 10 times more than what they have in deposit. And then it assures them that I'm going to make my payments for the next 5 years.
Right. So this is really a sweet spot when we talk about above the roof and below the roof. If you can find a way to charge for shaded parking, which the RV and boat storage economics show is profitable, and you can also generate electricity from above the roof, it's really a win-win, and it just adds to the economics of the RV and boat storage model.
So, next slide.
The next slide would be the last one, I think.
Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we're into the question period.
Okay, so I believe you all who are attending can...
I actually have a lot of questions for you. I'm sorry, my audio bleeped there for a moment. I have quite a few questions here for you, so let's get started with the first one. Let's see, this one. First question is, I know solar is a good business decision in California. What do you think about Texas? It seems it doesn't make much sense in Texas.
You want to?
Well, I can answer that. I mean, there are certain, as we said, it's pretty site-specific and utility-specific. And in Texas, for instance, San Antonio has just initiated a feed-in tariff for 29 cents. That's better than any California feed-in tariff by 3 times. So it all depends. Austin has some great programs as well. So I would say that the first thing to do is to go on that Desired USA website and see where you're located. And we could also help you with that as well. And take a look to see if you can take advantage of some of the more publicized opportunities. And if that doesn't work, then you take a look at your energy usage and see if it makes sense for you to make a capital investment into your project for the opportunity not to have to pay for electricity down the road. Your break-even is going to really depend on that point on what you pay for power and what your avoided utility costs are going to be.
All right. The next question is, you mentioned a 30% grant and a 30% tax credit. Is it both?
No, it's you have a choice of either one. You can either take the tax credit or the grant, but the grant ends in December of 2010, so you have to have 10% of your project spent, or you have to invest 10% of whatever the project's going to be by December of 2010, and then you can build it. As long as it's built by 2017, you're okay. But right, and who knows whether they're going to, we think they're going to renew the grant, but if you will still have the credit if they don't. So the grant was kind of an interim solution to the economic woes because people weren't making money, so they couldn't use the grant, the credit. So that's why they came up with the grant. So it's either or. It's not
right. The grant is part of Obama's stimulus package, and as it stands right now, there have been some wind projects and other renewable energy products that have taken advantage of the grant, but there really haven't been that many solar projects. So whatever was budgeted for this grant has not yet been spent. So we're suspecting, and lobbyists are pushing hard to continue to have a grant in place since our economy has not recovered as well as we would like. The tax credit opportunity, in addition to a depreciation opportunity, is a little much for most people at this time.
Okay, I've had several people ask if you could please repeat the website where they can go to check for utility rebates.
Sure, I'll do that right now. It's www.desire, and that's DSIREUSA.org.
Okay, wonderful. Next question. Do the structures still qualify as a solar support if I were to enclose it on 3 sides?
I think you'd be pushing the envelope there. I mean, what you could do is something along this line. I mean, you could put up the structure and have the solar support, and then build like a fence around it. Would be maybe not touching the solar support system, and that would probably be okay.
Yeah, essentially what you're going to have to do to qualify for the tax grant or the tax credit is to have an accountant, an audited, financially reviewed statement as to what your costs are for the project. So we'll leave it to you to figure out how you want to play that out. I don't think they ask for pictures, but they mostly are looking for giving you credit for the structure that generates the power and not for any supplemental features.
Okay, great. In regards to solar, is this just exclusively for RV and boat storage, or can mini storage take advantage of this too?
Well, you can put solar on mini storage, of course, but you won't be able to take the tax advantages on the mini storage itself. Now, if you, for example, if you had to, let's say you had to re-roof your mini storage, you could probably take advantage of the re-roofing of the mini storage if you put solar on it, because then you could say that you had to use a different panel so that you could attach solar to it. But the whole structure you can't take advantage of because it has a use. When you pull off the solar, it still has the use, and so you'd be sticking your neck out if you tried to take the structures as well.
Okay. And this also
solar on a mini storage.
Right, and what we've seen a lot of people interested in and what we've been talking to a lot of people about also is it just doesn't have to apply to new construction. We can have some existing RV boat storage or even self-storage facilities, and if they want to participate in a renewable energy program, there's opportunities to roll on some thin film. There's other PV that's available that could help generate some solar income. And help make your site green. And we can talk about, if anyone has any questions, they can always feel free to email us and we can address those specific issues.
Perfect. Next question, do photovoltaic cells require cleaning maintenance to maintain output?
Yeah.
Yes. If you look at the models that we have, we actually do have a budget for operation and maintenance, and that would include some cleaning. You want to keep your panels clean, and that's actually another reason why you want to tilt them a little bit so you can get some water runoff and keep them clean. And if you're in a particularly dust-heavy zone or some places where your panels are going to get dirty, it's actually going to reduce your output. So you'd want to hose them down. It's quite simple. It's just a little water to hose them down to clean them off.
But, if you're in an area where if it rains a lot, then that'll help too. So.
Yeah.
How well does photovoltaic function in the Midwest, where we have a snow load to contend with during the winter?
Well, I'm currently in New York right now. New Jersey is probably one of the fastest growing solar markets that there is. So, and snow does affect them. You don't get as much output when of course snow's on the panels, but you get plenty of output during the the spring and the summer and the fall. So I mean we're working on a project that's going to be 20 megawatts, which is huge for Long Island. So, and there's a lot of big solar projects out here. So snow is really, you just have to design the system to account for it. That's all.
Right, and in respect to designing the system, you're going to want to take some tilting into consideration. Also, there's some opportunities to use frameless panels, so the snow will glide off a bit quicker. And you have to remember that the panels are generating power, so they're going to warm up and they're going to melt the snow. So it's not going to be like a stagnant surface where the snow is just going to pile and pile and pile. So they're doing it in Colorado, and they're doing it in heavy snow country. So what you need to take account for is the snow load as it relates to the structure.
Okay, next question. Does the addition of PV over enclosed storage require additional water? I believe this is supposed to be waterproofing or other costs that generally make this application not profitable.
Well, the problem with putting it on mini storage, especially existing storage, and you can do it, it's just you do have to, because it is a roof and there are things of value stored beneath that roof, it's a little bit more liability because you've got to attach the solar in such a way that you're not penetrating the existing roof. I mean, you can do it, but my preference is to put it on RV and boat storage where it's not an issue. But you definitely can do it in such a way that you don't penetrate the mini storage. But you got to make sure that you do it right. That's all.
Right, and one thing that to remind everyone, especially with the RV and boat storage industry, covered parking doesn't mean that it's waterproof or watertight, and rain can come in sideways, and there are cracks in between each of the panels, and that's for several reasons. And there is going to be, if it rains, some drips through, and so just to let you know that these are not watertight canopies, but they also so not to represent them as such.
Another question, have you had many of your clients pursue the federal tax grant, and were they successful in getting the grant?
Well, that's still up for debate. I mean, we are still in the midst of projects where the power on has not yet happened, and we are, it's essentially there. The process has been established. The government arm that will be signing the checks is supposedly the DOE or another agency to be determined. So the short answer of it is I haven't seen someone with a check on a solar project, but we have seen checks cut for wind and other renewable energy projects.
Okay, next question. I noticed that on the 5-year income projections, you reduced the electricity revenue by 1% or more per year. I would expect rates to be stable or increase. Do the panels lose output potential each year?
Yes.
Well, there's a degradation on the panel, 0.01%. And the panels are warranted for 25 years for 80% output. So the panel manufacturers take into account a degradation of 0.01% a year, and you would assume that rates would increase. But one of the gotchas on the feed-in tariff is that you lock into a rate with no accelerator. So they make it as least attractive as possible for the end user. So you lock in at today's rate with no accelerator in exchange for the guarantee of a check for 20 years from the utility company.
Okay, another question. Can the full 100% of the solar cost be depreciated over the 5 years, or is the basis reduced by the 30% tax credit?
That's a good question. The basis is reduced by half of the tax credit. So there is a calculation that they take into account for the depreciation for the makers, and they give you half. You must basically adjust your cost basis by the tax credit, and I believe it's half of that or 40% of that. And there's a calculation that's spelled out in the regs.
Okay. Do you have any information on how close panels can be to an airport? Are there any restrictions as to proximity to airports?
I believe there's some coding that relates to the color, right, Bob? And we're doing some off-airport parking facilities.
You just got to use a panel that doesn't have a reflective surface, that's all.
Yeah, right.
Okay. My state, Virginia, does not have any credits. Have you been able to make this work financially without any state or utility rebates or grants?
Yes. I mean, if you do a feed-in tariff, if they have a feed-in tariff, which I don't think they do, but maybe they do, but as long as you have the feed-in tariff, you don't get the utility rebates anyway. So.
Okay.
Right, and you know, in certain instances, we've also been advised by the utility companies that if you've got an interesting project, to submit it to them and see if they might be interested in entertaining a feed-in tariff for your particular site.
Okay. Can you build a self-storage facility under a separate support for the PV system? Does it affect the real estate tax?
In California, it does not. In California, solar is exempt from real estate tax. And so that's a good point. I'm glad somebody brought that up. Like on my project, the only thing that my project will increase my tax roll is the site improvements. But the solar will not be a part of the evaluation for increased property tax.
Okay, and we have time for just a few more questions here. The next one is, what is the best panel manufacturer?
There really isn't that. You really can't answer that because each panel depends on the application. It just depends on what panel you want to use. So, yeah, it depends on the output you're trying to reach, the area of the country. I mean, there's all kinds of different variables.
Right. There's reputable panel manufacturers, and for sure you want to make sure that they're warranting their output for 25 years at 85%. That's pretty much a standard. And then as it relates to that, you're going to try to decide what panel you might want to use. In areas where there's some fog or not as much sun as others, a thin film might be a more appropriate panel, and there's different manufacturers that do that. And so there's just a lot of different elements that play into the panel. The most important thing is the warranty and that it's backed by a reputable company. And then you just look for price, and you see what kind of panel wattage you want and the type of panel. And then you, like anything else, you look for the best price for that panel.
Okay, we have a lot of questions that we're not going to get to, but I will close with this final question. You mentioned net metering. What is that?
You want me to take that, or you want to take it? Robin?
It's up to you. You want to take it? You want me to? I can take it. So net metering is a policy that consumers have with their utility company, and it's different from a feed-in tariff, because a feed-in tariff, you essentially throw whatever power you generate back to the utility company, and they pay you for that. With net metering, most electricity meters kind of reflect power in and out in both directions. So whatever power you're generating from your solar system is feeding back into the meter, and ultimately it offsets the amount of power that's coming back to power your. So it's sort of like if it's traveling in both directions, the power you generate is going back in to offset the uses that you're having to take. Do you have a better way of explaining that, Bob?
Yeah, the meter runs backwards during the day and forwards at night.
There you go. That makes a lot of sense.
Backwards during the day when the sun is shining.
All right. Thank you guys very much. I know we had some technical difficulties here, but I think that there's been some great information. Again, there's a lot of questions that we were not able to get to, but those will be answered individually after the webinar. We'd like to thank everyone for attending, and we hope we provided you with a lot of useful information. You will be receiving an email within the next few days with a link to the archived presentation so you can hear it again in its entirety. And again, as a reminder, you can go to our website, ministoragemessenger.com, to get information about any of our upcoming webinars. The next scheduled webinar is on March 10th, and it is presented by the Parham Group. The topic is Understanding a Self-Storage Proforma, presented by Mike Parham. Thank you again for attending, and have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What happened with the computer? It died. Are we done?